A vet helped a German shepherd after losing her puppies. But a year later, the dog's action broke everyone. One stormy night, a vet fights to save a mother dog who's lost everything. In her eyes, the vet sees her own pain, and a bond is born between two souls who've both lost too much. But when a man in polished boots shows up, demanding the dog back, it becomes clear. This isn't just about an animal. It's about power, secrets, and the kind of love that defies cruelty itself. Months later, the dog's quiet strength turns into something no one expected. When the world needed her most, she remembered who she was. Because sometimes, the one you save comes back to save you. But what did this German shepherd do that made an entire town fall silent and brought a monster to his knees? I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Type it down below, and while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. Thunder cracked across the dark sky as Dr. Lila Hargrove's truck splashed through puddles on the rain-slicked road. Her windshield wipers fought against the downpour, barely keeping up with the sheets of water. Through the storm's fury, her headlights caught a dark shape by the roadside. "Oh no," she whispered, pulling over carefully. There, huddled against an old fence post, lay a German shepherd, her swollen belly telling a story Lila knew all too well. The dog's amber eyes met hers with a mix of fear and desperation. Lila grabbed her emergency kit from the passenger seat and stepped out into the storm. Cold rain immediately soaked through her jacket as she approached slowly, speaking in soft tones. "Easy there, girl. I'm here to help." The shepherd whimpered, her sides heaving with contractions. Lila's heart clenched. This wasn't good. The dog needed immediate medical attention. "Let's get you somewhere warm and dry," she murmured, carefully wrapping her jacket around the trembling animal. The dog didn't resist as Lila lifted her into the truck, a worrying sign that told her just how exhausted the mother-to-be was. The drive to her clinic seemed endless, even though it was just minutes away. Lila kept glancing at her passenger, noting the labored breathing and occasional whines of pain. Her mind raced with preparations. She'd need warm blankets, her surgical kit just in case, medications. Finally pulling up to the small building that housed her veterinary practice, Lila carried the shepherd inside. Water dripped from both of them onto the linoleum floor as she hurried to the exam room. Her hands moved quickly, setting up everything she'd need while keeping one eye on her patient. "Hang in there, sweet girl," she encouraged, hooking up monitoring equipment. The dog's vital signs weren't good. Too weak, too stressed. Hours passed in a blur of medical intervention as Lila fought to save both mother and unborn puppies. But sometimes, she thought with a familiar ache in her chest, life had other plans. One by one, the stillborn puppies arrived. Lila's throat tightened as she wrapped each tiny body, remembering another loss, another time she'd felt this helpless. The mother dog's eyes followed her movements, understanding dawning in those intelligent amber depths. "I'm so sorry," Lila whispered, her voice breaking. She stroked the shepherd's head as the last puppy was delivered, just as still as its siblings. The storm outside seemed to echo their shared grief, thunder rolling mournfully across the sky. Dawn was breaking when Lila finally finished cleaning up. The shepherd lay quietly on a bed of blankets, refusing the water and food Lila had offered. She knew that look, had seen it in her own mirror in the months after her miscarriage. That hollow emptiness that made even basic self-care seem pointless. Sitting down beside the dog, Lila let her own tears fall. "You need a name," she said softly. "Something strong and beautiful, like you." The shepherd's ears twitched slightly. "Kaya," Lila decided. It means pure in some Native American languages. Pure heart, pure spirit. Kaya's tail moved slightly, the first response she'd shown since the delivery. Lila smiled through her tears, reaching out to scratch behind those alert ears. "I know what it's like," she confided, "to lose something so precious before you ever really had it. To feel like your body betrayed you." The memories washed over her. The excitement of discovering she was pregnant, decorating the nursery with her then-husband, picking out names. Then the cramping, the hospital, the devastating silence where a heartbeat should have been. The marriage hadn't survived the loss. She'd fled Denver for this small town, hoping to rebuild her life in peace. Now here she was, 3 years later, finding unexpected kinship with a grieving shepherd dog. Kaya's head lifted slightly, pressing into Lila's hand as if seeking comfort. Or maybe offering it. "You're staying with me," Lila decided firmly. She'd have to search for Kaya's owners, of course, but something told her this dog had been abandoned. The lack of collar or microchip, the location where she'd found her, it painted a sad but all too common picture. Rising stiffly, Lila gathered more blankets and a fresh bowl of water. She arranged them carefully around Kaya, creating a nest of comfort. "We'll get through this together," she promised. "One day at a time." The storm was passing now, its fury spent. Weak sunlight began filtering through the windows, touching Kaya's sable coat with gold. Lila settled down beside her again, medical charts forgotten. Sometimes healing required more than medicine. It needed presence, understanding, the quiet acknowledgement of shared pain. Hours passed. Lila dozed occasionally, jerking awake whenever Kaya shifted or whimpered. The shepherd still refused food, but had taken a few sips of water. It was a start. Lila knew from experience that grief couldn't be rushed, that healing followed its own timeline. As evening approached, Lila prepared to spend the night at the clinic. She couldn't bear the thought of leaving Kaya alone, not when their connection was so new and fragile. Besides, she needed monitoring after the difficult delivery. "You're not alone anymore," she told Kaya, settling onto the floor with a pillow and blanket. The shepherd's tail thumped weakly against the blankets, acknowledgement, perhaps even gratitude. Lila reached out to stroke that soft fur, feeling some of her own long-buried grief ease with each touch. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. There would be questions to answer, decisions to make. But for now, in the quiet aftermath of loss, two wounded souls had found each other. And sometimes, Lila thought as she drifted off to sleep with her hand resting on Kaya's flank, that was enough of a beginning. Through the window, stars began appearing in the clearing sky, their light touching the sleeping figures with gentle promise. The storm had passed, leaving behind not just destruction, but the possibility of renewal. In the small examination room of a rural veterinary clinic, that possibility had taken root in the unlikely bond between a grieving doctor and a mother dog who had lost everything. Kaya's breathing had steadied, falling into rhythm with Lila's. Together they rested, each drawing comfort from the other's presence. The night wrapped around them like a protective blanket, offering sanctuary for their shared healing to begin. Morning would come soon enough, bringing with it the need to face the world again. But for now, in this moment of connection forged through loss and compassion, both Lila and Kaya had found something they desperately needed: understanding, acceptance, and the first tentative steps toward hope. The clinic settled into silence, broken only by the occasional distant rumble of thunder and the soft sound of shared breathing. Outside, the world continued its turning, but inside this room, time seemed to pause, allowing two broken hearts to begin their careful mending in the comfort of each other's company. Dawn crept through the windows of Red Bluff Veterinary Clinic, painting the examination room in soft, golden light. Dr. Lila Hargrove stretched, her muscles stiff from sleeping on the floor beside Kaya. The German Shepherd lifted her head slightly, those amber eyes more alert than they'd been the night before. "Good morning, sweet girl," Lila murmured, reaching out to check Kaya's temperature. The dog allowed the examination with quiet patience. Her vital signs were stable, though she still showed little interest in the fresh food Lila offered. Jenny, Lila's assistant, arrived at 7 o'clock sharp, her eyes widening at the sight of her boss in yesterday's rumpled clothes. "Did you sleep here?" "Couldn't leave her," Lila explained, running a hand through her tangled hair. "Would you mind getting me a fresh set of scrubs from my office?" The morning routine settled around them, the familiar rhythm of cleaning cages, preparing medications, and reviewing the day's appointments. Lila had just finished checking on their overnight patients when the clinic's front door chimed. A man stood in the waiting room, his presence somehow filling the small space. He wore tactical pants and an expensive leather jacket, his boots gleaming with military polish. Everything about him spoke of authority and control. "Good morning," he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "I'm Wade Rusk. I understand you have my dog." Lila straightened, instinctively placing herself between the man and the hallway leading to Kaya. "Do you have proof of ownership?" "Of course." He produced a folder of documents with practiced efficiency. "Registration papers, breeding records, the works. She's valuable stock." Lila's stomach turned as she examined the papers. They looked official, but something felt off about them. The dates didn't quite align with Kaya's apparent age, and the breeding history seemed excessive. "I'm afraid I can't release her today," Lila said carefully. "She's just lost an entire litter and needs medical monitoring." Rusk's smile tightened. "I appreciate your concern, Doctor, but she's my property. I'll sign whatever waiver you need." "This isn't about liability," Lila countered. "It's about the animal's welfare. She's severely traumatized and physically depleted. Releasing her now would be medically irresponsible." "Medically irresponsible," Rusk repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Let me be clear, Dr. Hargrove. That dog represents a significant investment. I'm being polite now, but my patience isn't endless." Jenny hovered nearby, her face pale. Lila stood her ground, though her heart hammered. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Rusk?" "Threatening? No." His laugh was soft and cold. "I'm simply explaining reality. You're new to Red Bluff, aren't you? Still learning how things work here?" "I know exactly how things work," Lila replied. "I'm a licensed veterinarian with a duty of care, until I'm satisfied that Kaya—" "Runa," he cut in. "Her name is Runa. Is medically fit for release. She stays here. If you'd like to dispute that, feel free to contact the State Veterinary Board." Something dangerous flickered in Rusk's eyes. "You're making a mistake, Doctor. One you'll regret." He placed a business card on the counter. "Call me when you're ready to be reasonable." The door chimed again as he left, the sound somehow menacing in the sudden silence. Jenny rushed to lock it behind him. "Dr. Hargrove," she whispered, "you shouldn't have done that. You don't know who he is." "Who is he?" Lila asked, her hands shaking as she gathered the papers he'd left. "He owns that big security company out by the highway, has contracts with the county, connections everywhere." Jenny wrung her hands. "People who cross him tend to have accidents." Lila thought of Kaya, or Runa, and the excessive breeding records, the lack of proper medical care, the way she'd been found abandoned on the roadside, heavily pregnant and malnourished. "I don't care who he is," she said firmly, though her voice wavered. "What he's doing isn't right." "Neither is getting yourself hurt or losing the clinic," Jenny pleaded. "Please, just be careful. Men like that, they don't play by the rules." Lila walked back to check on Kaya, who had risen to her feet for the first time since the delivery. The shepherd's ears were forward, her body tense. She'd heard Rusk's voice, Lila realized, and she was terrified. "It's okay," Lila soothed, kneeling beside her. "You're safe here." But as she stroked Kaya's trembling form, Lila couldn't shake the chill of Rusk's words. She'd faced difficult people before in Denver, but this felt different. There was something calculated in his menace, a confidence born of knowing he could act with impunity. The morning sun caught the edges of his business card where it lay on the counter. Such an innocent thing, that rectangle of expensive paper. Yet it felt like a warning, a reminder that her defiance had been noted and would be answered. Jenny was right. She needed to be careful. But looking at Kaya, seeing the trust beginning to form in those amber eyes, Lila knew she couldn't back down. Whatever Rusk's game was, whatever power he wielded in Red Bluff, she wouldn't let him hurt this dog again. The rest of the morning passed in tense anticipation, every chime of the door making them jump. But Rusk didn't return. Instead, his threat hung in the air like storm clouds gathering on the horizon, promising trouble to come. Lila buried herself in work, trying to focus on her other patients while keeping a watchful eye on Kaya. The shepherd had begun taking small amounts of food, each bite a tiny victory. But her progress felt fragile now, shadowed by the knowledge that someone waited to snatch her back into darkness. By afternoon, Jenny's nerves had settled enough for her to share what she knew about Rusk's operation. Rumors of dogs kept in poor conditions, of backdoor deals with county officials, of money changing hands to look the other way. Nothing concrete enough to prove, but enough to paint a disturbing picture. "We should report him," Lila said, but Jenny shook her head. "Others have tried. Their complaints disappear into thin air." She hesitated. "Look, I know you want to help, but maybe this time, maybe we should just..." "Just what?" Lila challenged. "Return her to be bred again until she dies from it?" The words hung between them, harsh but true. Jenny had no answer. Lila spent another night at the clinic, unable to leave Kaya unprotected. She dozed fitfully in her office chair, starting at every sound from outside. Each passing car might be Rusk returning. Each shadow could hide his enforcers. But beneath her fear ran a deeper current of determination. She'd left Denver running from pain, seeking safety in anonymity. Perhaps that's why Rusk's threat felt so personal. It challenged not just her professional ethics, but her very reason for being here. Kaya slept nearby, her breathing steady now, her body gradually relaxing in the safety of Lila's presence. Whatever came next, whatever price she had to pay for defying Wade Rusk, Lila knew she'd made the right choice. Some things were worth fighting for, even in the face of danger. Some battles chose you, she realized, watching the moon cast shadows through the window. And sometimes healing meant standing your ground, not running away. The morning sun streamed through the clinic windows as Lila watched Kaya pace the recovery area. 3 days had passed since Rusk's visit, and though the shepherd's physical strength was returning, her spirit remained wounded. Still, there was something different about her movements today, a precision that caught Lila's attention. A truck backfired outside, and Kaya's response surprised Lila. Instead of cowering, the dog went completely still, head lifted, ears forward. It wasn't fear. It was assessment, like a soldier scanning for threats. That's not normal shelter dog behavior, Lila muttered, making notes in Kaya's file. The bell above the door chimed, and Ezra Boone walked in, bringing with him the smell of coffee and early morning air. His paramedic uniform was wrinkled from an overnight shift, but his eyes were alert as ever. "Thought you could use this," he said, setting a cup on the counter. "Jenny said you've been pulling double shifts." "My hero," Lila smiled, reaching for the coffee. "Though I'm pretty sure you're just checking up on me after Jenny told you about our visitor." Ezra's expression turned serious. "Rusk's got a reputation. When I heard he'd been here," he shrugged. "Let's just say coffee seemed like a good excuse to stop by." A sharp whistle from outside, probably some kid on their way to school, interrupted them. Lila nearly dropped her cup when Kaya's head snapped up, body tensing into perfect attention. The shepherd's eyes focused intensely on the door, waiting. "Well, that's interesting," Ezra said softly, watching Kaya with newfound curiosity. "Try whistling again." Lila gave a short whistle. Kaya's response was immediate. She turned, sat, and fixed her gaze on Lila with laser focus. "This isn't just training." Ezra moved closer to the recovery pen. "This is professional conditioning. Mind if I try something?" At Lila's nod, he made a series of quick hand signals. Kaya's ears twitched forward, her body language shifting subtly. Though she didn't respond to the specific commands, her attention was unmistakable. "She recognizes the concept," Ezra explained. "Maybe not these exact signals, but she knows what hand commands are. Someone invested serious time in her training." Lila leaned against the counter, processing this new information. "Yesterday, I noticed her tracking scents through the clinic. Not just food, she was following specific trails, methodical about it. And when she rests, she positions herself where she can see all the entrances." "Classic SAR dog behavior," Ezra nodded. "Search and rescue teams train their dogs to maintain situational awareness, even off-duty." He paused, studying Kaya more closely. "May I?" With gentle movements, he approached the pen. Kaya watched him carefully, but allowed him to run his hands along her neck and shoulders. His fingers found something near her left shoulder blade. "Here, feel this." He guided Lila's hand to a small, rough patch of tissue beneath the fur. "That's from a removed microchip. Not the standard shelter kind. This was a professional tracker chip. SR dogs are required to have them." Lila's heart beat faster. So she wasn't just a breeding dog. She had a real purpose, a job. Someone erased her past. "More than that," Ezra's voice was grim. "These dogs cost thousands to train. They're valuable assets. No department would just sell one for breeding. Something's very wrong here." They spent the next hour documenting everything they could find. Old scars that spoke of working injuries, calluses on her paws consistent with regular training, the way she responded to certain sounds and movements. Each detail added to a picture of a highly trained professional dog whose identity had been deliberately obscured. "The county has a SAR unit," Ezra said, scrolling through his phone. "Let me make some calls, see if anyone remembers losing a dog matching her description." While he stepped outside to use his phone, Lila sat with Kaya, her mind racing. The shepherd rested her head on Lila's knee, those intelligent eyes holding secrets she couldn't voice. "What happened to you?" Lila whispered, stroking the soft fur between Kaya's ears. "Who were you before?" Ezra returned, looking troubled. "No official reports of missing SAR dogs in the past year, but—" He hesitated. "There's something else. About 18 months ago, we lost a handler in a building collapse. His dog disappeared around the same time. Everyone assumed she died with him." "You think Kaya might be that dog?" Lila asked. "The timing fits, and Rusk's company took over the county's security contracts right after that incident." Ezra's jaw tightened. including oversight of the canine programs. The implications settled heavily between them. If Kaya was indeed that missing dog, if someone had deliberately taken her and erased her identity. "We need proof," Lila said firmly. "Records, witnesses, something concrete. I'll talk to some of my old SAR contacts, quietly." Ezra checked his watch. "I'm due for a shift, but I'll start asking around." As he turned to leave, Lila caught his arm. "Thank you for helping with this, for believing me." His smile was warm. Hard not to believe someone willing to stand up to Wade Rusk for a dog's sake. "Just watch your back, okay? Until we know more?" After he left, Lila found herself studying Kaya with new eyes. The shepherd's bearing, her intelligence, the depth of training still evident in her responses. It all spoke of a noble past, a purpose beyond breeding. Someone had taken that from her, used her, tried to erase who she was. "We'll figure this out," she promised Kaya softly. "We'll find out who you really are." The shepherd's tail wagged gently, and for a moment, Lila saw a flash of the working dog she must have been. Proud, capable, dedicated to service. Whatever the cost, whatever Rusk might do, she knew they had to uncover the truth. Kaya deserved to have her identity back. And maybe, Lila thought, helping her reclaim it would help them both heal. The morning sun barely touched the clinic's windows when Lila heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A white county animal control van pulled up, its official seal glinting in the early light. Her stomach tightened as two officers stepped out, manila envelope in hand. Through the window, she watched them approach. Their uniforms were crisp, but their expressions were uncomfortable, the look of people following orders they'd rather not carry out. The shorter officer, whose nameplate read Martinez, held out a thick stack of papers. "Dr. Hargrove?" Martinez cleared his throat. "We have an official order for the release of the German shepherd found last week. The owner has filed proper documentation." Lila accepted the envelope with steady hands, though her heart raced. Inside were transfer papers, ownership documents, and a formal demand letter from Rusk Security Services. Everything looked official, stamped with county seals and signed by the proper authorities. "I can't release her," Lila said firmly. "She's still recovering from a traumatic birthing event. As her treating veterinarian, I'm filing for a medical hold." The taller officer shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, Mr. Rusk's company has contracts with the county. They handle our canine training and placement. The paperwork is in order." "Is it?" Lila pulled out her phone, showing them photos she'd taken of Kaya's condition upon arrival. This dog was severely undernourished, physically exhausted, and lost an entire litter. She needs continued medical care and observation. Martinez looked at the photos, his professional mask slipping slightly. "That's pretty rough, but our orders—" "Your orders don't override my medical judgment," Lila interrupted, her voice firm but kind. "I'll submit my hold request today. Until then, Kaya stays under my care." The officers exchanged glances. Finally, Martinez nodded. "We'll note your intent to file. But Dr. Hargrove, Mr. Rusk has significant influence with the county board. Are you sure you want to fight this?" "I'm sure I don't want to abandon my patient," she replied. After they left, Lila's hands began to shake. She knew what challenging Rusk meant. She'd seen his type before, men who used power and connections to get their way. But looking at Kaya, peaceful in her recovery pen, she knew she couldn't give in. The phone rang an hour later. The county veterinary board wanted to discuss her medical hold request immediately. The meeting was conducted via video call, and Lila recognized several faces from local veterinary conferences. But seated among them was Wade Rusk, his presence a silent threat. Dr. Hargrove, the board chairman began, we've reviewed your intent to file a medical hold. However, Mr. Rusk has raised some concerns about your judgment in this case. Rusk leaned forward, his smile sympathetic, but his eyes cold. We're worried about you, Doctor. After your personal losses, it's understandable to become emotionally attached to cases involving maternal trauma. But is it clouding your professional judgment? The words hit like physical blows. Her miscarriage, her divorce, private pain she'd buried deep, now wielded as weapons against her. She felt the board members' pitying looks, saw them exchanging knowing glances. My personal history, Lila managed, her voice tight, has nothing to do with my medical assessment. The dog's condition. The dog, Rusk interrupted smoothly, is valuable breeding stock that belongs to my company. Your emotional projection onto this case suggests you might benefit from some time off. Perhaps counseling? Before Lila could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Ezra. Don't let him bait you. Stay professional. I'm 5 minutes away. Those simple words steadied her. She took a deep breath and faced the screen again. My medical recommendations are based on documented evidence. I've submitted photographs and test results showing the dog's condition. I'm happy to have another veterinarian examine her, but I will not release a traumatized animal for immediate breeding purposes. Dr. Hargrove, the chairman began, but he was interrupted by a knock at Lila's door. Ezra entered, still in his paramedic uniform. Sorry to interrupt, he said, not sounding sorry at all. Dr. Hargrove, I need to submit some witness statements about the dog's condition when she was found, as first responder on scene. Rusk's smile flickered. The board members straightened, suddenly more attentive. A first responder's testimony carried weight. I have dash cam footage too, Ezra continued casually. Shows the dog's condition pretty clearly. Figured it might help with the medical documentation. The chairman cleared his throat. Yes, well, perhaps we should review all the evidence before making any decisions. Dr. Hargrove, please submit your formal hold request by tomorrow. We'll reconvene once we have all documentation. The screen went dark. Lila sagged in her chair, emotional exhaustion hitting her all at once. He's going to keep coming. He'll use everything he can against me. Let him try, Ezra said quietly. Truth matters more than influence, and you're not fighting alone. Lila looked up at him, saw the steady conviction in his eyes. Why are you helping? Me? You could get in trouble with the county. Because it's right, he said simply. And because I've seen what happens when good people stay quiet while others abuse power. He nodded toward Kaya's pen. She needs someone to stand up for her. You're doing that. I stand with people who do what's right. His words wrapped around her like armor, protecting her from Rusk's emotional attacks. She thought of all the times she'd stayed quiet in her life, all the compromises she'd made to keep peace. Not this time. Okay, she said, straightening her shoulders. Then let's do this right. I'll prepare the medical documentation. Can you get me that dash cam footage? Already downloading it? Ezra smiled. And I'm talking to some old SAR handlers. If Kaya really is who we think she is, there are people who'll want to know she's alive. Lila walked to Kaya's pen, where the shepherd watched them with intelligent eyes. Hear that, girl? We're going to fight for you. The right way, the legal way. Kaya's tail wagged gently, and Lila felt her resolve strengthen. Rusk could question her stability, try to use her past against her. But she knew who she was. A healer, a protector, someone who stood up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. She began gathering her medical records, organizing her evidence. The fight ahead would be hard, but she wasn't alone. And sometimes she was learning. The deepest healing came from standing firm in what you knew was right. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the scrubland as Lila's truck bounced along the rutted dirt road. Ezra followed close behind in his own vehicle, their headlights cutting through the growing dusk. They'd chosen this remote location carefully, an abandoned training ground that search and rescue teams had once used, far from prying eyes. Kaya sat in the back seat, more alert than Lila had seen her since that first night. The German Shepherd's ears pricked forward, nose working constantly as she took in the familiar scents of sage and juniper. "This is crazy, right?" Lila muttered to herself, glancing in the rearview mirror at Kaya. "Sneaking around like teenagers?" But they needed proof, real, undeniable evidence of Kaya's training, something that would stand up in court and show she wasn't just another breeding dog. They pulled into a clearing bordered by scraggly pine trees. The ground was uneven, scattered with rocks and thorny bushes. Perfect terrain for testing search abilities. Ezra parked beside her, and they both got out, boots crunching on the sandy soil. "You sure about this?" he asked, pulling a battered medical kit from his truck. "No," Lila admitted. "But we need to know for sure." She took out her phone, checking that she had enough storage for video. "You really think she'll remember the commands?" Ezra shouldered the medical kit. "If she's SAR trained, those instincts don't just disappear. It becomes part of who they are." He paused, looking at Kaya, who watched them intently through the truck window. "Like riding a bicycle." Lila opened the back door, and Kaya stepped out carefully. The shepherd's whole demeanor had changed. Head high, muscles taut with anticipation. She looked nothing like the grieving mother from the clinic. "I'll hide the kit," Ezra said. "Give me 10 minutes. Film everything from the moment we start." Lila nodded, watching him disappear into the scrubland. She knelt beside Kaya, who trembled slightly. Not with fear, she realized, but with eagerness. "You know what's coming, don't you?" she whispered, scratching behind Kaya's ears. The dog's amber eyes met hers with an intensity that took her breath away. 10 minutes later, Ezra returned, brushing dust from his hands. Lila had her phone ready, recording. "Okay," he said quietly. "Let's see what she remembers." He pulled out a worn orange vest from his pocket, standard SR gear. Kaya's tail began to wag as he approached with it. "The vest alone is a good sign," Lila murmured, keeping the camera steady. "Look at her body language." Kaya stood perfectly still as Ezra slipped the vest over her head, adjusting the straps with practiced ease. The transformation was immediate and stunning. Every line of her body spoke of purpose, of training, of knowing exactly what was expected. "Search!" Ezra commanded, his voice carrying across the clearing. Kaya's head snapped up. She began quartering the ground immediately, moving in precise patterns that Lila knew couldn't be accidental. This was muscle memory, years of training showing through. "She's working the wind," Ezra explained quietly as they followed. "See how she keeps crossing it, checking for scent patterns?" Lila could barely speak, watching Kaya work. This was not a broken dog. This was an athlete, a professional, showing them exactly who she'd always been. They followed as Kaya methodically covered the ground, her nose working constantly. Suddenly she stopped, head lifting. Her body language changed, more intense, more focused. "She's got something," Ezra breathed. Kaya moved forward with purpose now, tracking an invisible trail through the scrub. They scrambled to keep up as she led them over rocks, through brush, always moving with absolute certainty. Then she stopped, sat, and gave 3 sharp barks. "That's it," Ezra exclaimed. "That's a find signal." Sure enough, tucked under a juniper bush was the medical kit. Kaya hadn't just found it. She'd followed procedure perfectly. maintaining her sit-stay until Ezra approached to retrieve it. "Good girl!" Lila couldn't keep the emotion from her voice. "Oh, you wonderful, wonderful girl!" They ran 3 more tests, hiding the kit in increasingly difficult spots. Each time, Kaya performed flawlessly, showing perfect search patterns, maintaining focus, and giving clear signals when she found her target. As the sun set, painting the sky in deep purples and oranges, Lila finally stopped recording. Her hands were shaking slightly as she saved the videos. "This is going to be hard to explain away," Ezra said, removing Kaya's vest. "That's not just basic training. Those are specific SAR protocols. She had to have been part of a real team." Lila knelt beside Kaya, who was panting happily, clearly pleased with her work. In the fading light, she saw something she'd missed before, a quiet pride in the shepherd's bearing, a dignity that had nothing to do with breeding papers or ownership claims. "She was never broken," Lila said softly, running her hands over Kaya's coat. "She was just waiting for someone to see her for who she really is." Kaya pressed against her side, and Lila felt tears prick at her eyes. How many others like her were out there? Highly trained animals, reduced to breeding stock, their true purposes forgotten? "We should head back," Ezra said, glancing at the darkening sky. "Got what we came for." As they drove back through the gathering darkness, Lila kept glancing in her mirror at Kaya. The shepherd sat tall now, alert and focused, as if her true self had finally been allowed to emerge from hiding. The videos would help their case, she knew. But more than that, they had given Kaya back something precious. The chance to show her worth, to prove that beneath the grief and trauma, she was still every inch the search and rescue dog she'd been trained to be. Lila's phone buzzed with a text from Ezra. "Still think we're crazy?" She smiled, looking again at Kaya in the mirror. "Maybe," she typed back, "but sometimes crazy is exactly what justice needs." The truck's headlights cut through the growing dark as they headed back to town, carrying with them proof that would be hard to ignore, not just of Kaya's training, but of her spirit. A spirit that hadn't been broken by loss or abuse, but had simply been waiting for the right moment to shine again. The morning sun hadn't yet touched the tops of the clinic's windows when Lila found the envelope. It sat innocently among the regular mail, but the law firm's letterhead made her stomach clench. Inside was a thick stack of legal documents, written in language that seemed designed to confuse and intimidate. She had to read it 3 times before the meaning became clear. Her hands started shaking. "They're trying to sue us into the ground," she told her assistant, Sarah, who stood nervously in the doorway. "Rusk is claiming negligent care, emotional distress, loss of valuable breeding stock." She let the papers fall to her desk. "The damages they're asking for would bankrupt the clinic." Sarah's face went pale. "Can they do that?" "They're certainly trying." Lila rubbed her temples, feeling a headache building. "Get me the county records from when Kaya was brought in. Everything we have." While Sarah dug through their files, Lila started making calls. The first was to her lawyer, who made concerned noises about the mounting legal costs. The second was to Ezra. He answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" "How do you know something's wrong?" "You never call this early unless it's bad news." She explained about the lawsuit. Ezra's silence on the other end spoke volumes. "I need your help," she said finally. "You mentioned your brother's SAR unit worked with some local kennels. Did you ever hear anything about Rusk's operation?" "Give me an hour," Ezra said. "I'll bring coffee." True to his word, Ezra arrived 60 minutes later with 2 large cups and a determined look in his eyes. They set up in Lila's office, spreading papers across every available surface. Something's not adding up, Lila said, comparing documents. The intake forms for Kaya list her as a stray, but there's no record of where she was actually found. The responding officer's name is smudged, and the case number doesn't match our sequence. Ezra leaned over her shoulder, frowning. Could be sloppy paperwork. Or deliberate obscuring. Lila pulled up the county's online database. Look at this. 3 years ago, Rusk's company, Frontier Security Solutions, ran a SAR dog training facility out by the old mining roads. They had county contracts, federal certification, everything. Then suddenly nothing. The whole operation just disappeared. I remember that place. Ezra's voice went tight. Silas, my brother, he mentioned it once. Said something felt off about their training methods. But he couldn't prove anything. They spent the next several hours digging deeper. Sarah brought them more coffee and helped sort through old newspaper archives. A pattern began to emerge. One of convenient paperwork errors, missing records, and officials looking the other way. Here, Ezra said suddenly, pulling up an article on his phone. 3 years ago, right before the kennel closed, there was an investigation into inappropriate breeding practices, but it was dropped. The investigating officer was transferred to another county. Lila felt cold despite the warm office. They're not just corrupt, they're systematic about it. Wait. Ezra sat up straighter. That date. That's less than a month before Silas died. The room went very quiet. Lila watched emotions play across Ezra's face. Grief, anger, dawning suspicion. He was looking into something, Ezra said slowly. He wouldn't tell me what, but he was worried. Said he'd found something that didn't add up about one of the local kennels. The night before the accident, he said he was going to talk to someone about it. And the next day, there was a collapse during a rescue operation, Lila finished softly. Ezra's hands clenched into fists. They said it was unstable ground, that he took an unnecessary risk. But Silas knew those mountains better than anyone. He wouldn't have made that kind of mistake. They worked through lunch, piecing together fragments of a larger picture. Rusk's company had been taking retired SAR dogs, erasing their histories, and using them for breeding. The puppies were sold as protection-trained animals at premium prices. When anyone got too close to the truth, they were silenced through legal threats, career pressure, or worse. Look at these numbers, Lila said, pointing to a spreadsheet. The kennel was reporting huge profits, but their official training program was barely breaking even. Where was all that money coming from? And where did all the dogs go? Ezra added. There's no record of what happened to them when the facility closed. They were interrupted by Sarah knocking on the door. Dr. Hargrove, there's someone here from the county health department. They say they need to do an immediate inspection. Lila and Ezra shared a look. Another random inspection, Lila said wearily. That's the third one this month. They're trying to wear you down, Ezra said. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. Well, they picked the wrong target. Lila stood up, straightening her white coat. Our records are immaculate. I'll handle the inspector. You keep digging. While Lila led the inspector through the clinic, Ezra made some calls of his own. By the time she returned, he had more pieces of the puzzle. I talked to some of my old SAR contacts, he said. Nobody wanted to say much on the record, but reading between the lines, Rusk's operation was dirty from the start. They were taking good dogs with years of service left, and forcing them into breeding programs. When the dogs broke down, they disappeared. Like they tried to do with Kaya, Lila said softly. Exactly like Kaya. Ezra's face was grim. And here's the kicker. Guess who sits on the county board that oversees animal control contracts? Rusk? His brother-in-law. Lila sank into her chair, the weight of what they were uncovering settling over her. This goes deeper than just one corrupt businessman. They've got people in position throughout the system. People who can make problems disappear, Ezra added. People who can pressure a vet clinic with endless inspections, or make sure certain questions don't get asked about missing dogs. Or about collapsed rescue operations, Lila asked gently. Ezra's jaw tightened. I always knew something was wrong about Silas's death. I just couldn't prove it. Maybe now we can. Lila gestured to the evidence they'd gathered. Not just about Silas, but about all of it. The missing dogs, the corrupt officials, the cover-ups. It won't be easy, Ezra warned. These people have money and influence. They'll fight dirty. Then we'll fight smarter. Lila pulled out the videos they'd taken of Kaya's test. We have proof that at least one of their breeding dogs is actually a trained SR animal. That opens the door to investigating all their records. Sarah appeared in the doorway again, looking worried. Dr. Hargrove, there's another legal notice. They're requesting an emergency hearing about Kaya. Tomorrow morning. Lila took the notice, reading it quickly. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. They want to force an immediate transfer of custody. They're scared, Ezra said. We're getting too close to something. Lila looked at the piles of evidence surrounding them, then at the window where she could see Kaya sleeping peacefully in the afternoon sun. The shepherd's ears twitched occasionally, perhaps dreaming of her days in service. Good, Lila said firmly. They should be scared, because we're not stopping until we expose every bit of this. The sun was setting when they finally finished organizing their findings. They had boxes of documents, digital records, and witness statements, all pointing to a system of corruption that had been operating unchecked for years. What do we do with all this? Sarah asked, looking at the accumulated evidence. First, we make copies. Lots of copies, Lila said. Then we start sending them to people who can't be bought. State investigators, federal agencies, journalists we can trust. And tomorrow? Ezra asked. Tomorrow we go to court. Lila's voice was steady. And we show them that the days of operating in shadows are over. As they packed up the evidence, Lila felt a strange mix of fear and determination. They were taking on powerful people, people who had already shown they were willing to go to extreme lengths to protect their interests. But looking at Kaya, remembering all the other dogs who had disappeared into Rusk's operation, she knew they had no choice. This wasn't just about one dog anymore. It was about breaking open a system that had allowed corruption to flourish, that had taken loyal service animals and treated them like commodities. It was about justice, for the dogs, for Silas, and for everyone else who had been silenced. The setting sun cast long shadows through the clinic windows, but Lila felt more clear-headed than she had in days. They had the truth on their side now, and tomorrow they would start making it heard. Ezra stood frozen, staring at the photographs spread across Lila's desk. His hands trembled slightly as he picked up one particular image, a proud German shepherd standing next to a smiling man in search and rescue gear. Lila watched his face carefully, noting how the color had drained from his cheeks. Ezra? She asked softly. What is it? He swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. It's impossible. His fingers traced the outline of the dog in the photograph. But I'd know those markings anywhere. The sable coat pattern, that white patch on her chest. He looked up at Kaya, who lay quietly in the corner of the office. This is Runa. Runa? Lila moved closer, studying the photograph. My brother's partner, his search and rescue dog. Ezra's voice cracked. She was supposed to be retired after Silas died. They told us she'd been placed with a veterans program. Kaya's ears perked up at the sound of her old name. She lifted her head, watching them intently. Runa, Ezra called softly. The shepherd's response was immediate. She rose and padded, over to him, sitting perfectly at attention, just as she'd been trained to do years ago. Ezra knelt beside her, his hands gentle as they framed her face. "It is you, girl. What did they do to you?" Lila's heart ached as she watched them. The pieces were falling into place. The expert training they'd witnessed, the removed microchip, the breeding scars. "They sold her," she said, anger building in her voice. "After Silas died, instead of honoring her service, they sold her to Rusk's operation." "But that's not possible," Ezra protested. "There are protocols, regulations. SR dogs can't just be sold off like equipment." Lila pulled out the county records they'd gathered. "Unless someone falsified the paperwork. Look at this. There was a government auction 3 years ago, right after the SAR unit was disbanded. But these documents, they're incomplete. Serial numbers missing, dates that don't match up." Ezra stood up, his grief turning to fury. 3 years ago. That's when Silas died in that grain elevator collapse. The investigation was rushed, paperwork pushed through so fast we could barely keep track. And now I'm wondering if that was deliberate too. Lila spread more documents across her desk. The auction records show Runa, listed only as retired working dog, was sold to a private security firm, one of Rusk's shell companies. "To be used as breeding stock," Ezra finished bitterly. "They took a decorated search and rescue dog, erased her history, and turned her into a puppy mill mother." Kaya, now known to be Runa, pressed against Ezra's leg, as if sensing his distress. The simple gesture of comfort, so characteristic of her training, made Ezra's eyes fill with tears. "She was more than just Silas's partner," he explained, his voice rough with emotion. "She saved 27 lives in her career. Mountain rescues, disaster response, missing children. She never failed a mission. Silas used to say she had a sixth sense about people in trouble." Lila thought about the gentle way Kaya had responded to her own grief. How the dog seemed to understand something deeper than what was visible on the surface. "She still has that sense," she said softly. "She's been healing me as much as I've been healing her." Ezra pulled out his phone, scrolling through old photos. "Here. This was their last successful rescue together." The image showed Silas and Runa, muddy but triumphant, with a rescued child wrapped in an emergency blanket. 2 weeks before the grain elevator collapse, the investigation said Silas went in against protocol, that he took unnecessary risks. But that wasn't like him. He and Runa were a perfect team. They never made amateur mistakes. "And now we know the investigation was overseen by the same people who profited from selling Runa," Lila said. "This goes beyond fraud, Ezra. They're exploiting tragedy for profit. How many other service dogs have they done this to?" "We have to stop them," Ezra said firmly. "Not just for Runa, but for Silas. For every dog they've stolen and every handler they've betrayed." Lila nodded, her determination matching his. "We will. But we have to be smart about it. Rusk has connections, influence. We need irrefutable proof." They spent the next hours piecing together their evidence. Lila's medical records documented Runa's physical condition, proving the toll of forced breeding. Ezra's photographs established her identity as a decorated SAR dog. The falsified auction documents showed the paper trail of corruption. "There's something else," Lila said, pulling out the videos they'd taken of Kaya's field test. "Watch this again, but now knowing she's Runa." The footage showed the shepherd executing perfect search patterns, responding to commands with military precision. But now they could see more. The muscle memory of years of training. The absolute focus that came from countless real-world rescues. "That's not just good training," Ezra said. "That's excellence earned in the field. Every move, every response, that's what elite search and rescue looks like." "And no breeding dog would have those skills," Lila added. "This proves she was active service when they took her." As they worked, Runa stayed close, moving between them as if she too understood the importance of what they were uncovering. Her presence was both a comfort and a reminder of what they were fighting for. "I should have looked harder," Ezra said quietly, during a pause in their work. "When they told us she was being retired, I should have demanded to see where she was going. But I was so caught up in grief over Silas." Lila touched his arm gently. "You couldn't have known. They deliberately hid this from everyone. But now we can make it right." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the office as they organized their evidence. Each document, each photograph, each video clip told part of a story of systematic corruption and exploitation. But together, they painted a damning picture of how Rusk and his allies had profited from tragedy. "We'll need protection," Lila said practically. "Once we start exposing this, they'll come at us hard." "I've got friends in the state police," Ezra replied. "Good people who knew Silas, who worked with SAR teams. They'll want to know about this." Runa, as if sensing the weight of the moment, rose and placed her head on Lila's lap. The gesture brought tears to Lila's eyes as she stroked the shepherd's ears. "You were protecting others even when no one was protecting you," she whispered to the dog. "But that changes now. We're going to make this right." The truth they had uncovered transformed their fight. It was no longer just about saving one dog from an unethical breeder. It was about exposing a system that turned service animals into commodities, that profited from tragedy, that buried truth under layers of bureaucratic fraud. It was about honoring the bond between handlers and their partners, about defending the principles that made search and rescue work possible. For Ezra, it was a chance to finally understand what happened to his brother and to restore dignity to Silas's partner. For Lila, it was an affirmation of everything she believed about healing and justice. And for Runa, finally known by her true name, it was the beginning of reclaiming her identity and purpose. As evening approached, they carefully copied every piece of evidence, creating multiple backups. They couldn't risk losing any of it, not when it represented their best chance at exposing Rusk's operation. "We'll start with the state police tomorrow," Ezra said. "Then the SAR Oversight Board. Once they see these records—" "We'll need to move fast," Lila added. "As soon as Rusk realizes we know who she really is, he'll try to discredit everything." Runa watched them with wise eyes, her presence a living testament to both the corruption they were fighting and the principles they were defending. She was no longer just a rescued breeding dog. She was Runa, decorated search and rescue partner, survivor of exploitation, and now key to exposing a system that had betrayed everything she'd been trained to serve. The morning light filtered through the clinic windows as Lila and Ezra spread their growing collection of evidence across her office desk. Coffee cups littered the surface, testament to their early start. Runa lay at their feet, her presence a constant reminder of why they were fighting. "I've got 3 former handlers willing to give statements," Ezra said, shuffling through a stack of papers. "They all worked SAR missions with Silas and Runa. They'll verify her training, her service record, everything." Lila nodded, her fingers flying across her laptop keyboard. "I'm pulling together the medical documentation, the removed microchip site, the physical signs of overbreeding, the dental records that match her service age. It's all here." They worked in comfortable synchronicity, their shared purpose creating an easy rhythm. Occasionally their hands would brush as they reached for the same document, sending small electric currents through both of them. Neither mentioned these moments, but both felt them deepen their connection. "Here's something interesting," Lila said, holding up a document. "I found Runa's original chip registration. It was deactivated the day after Silas's memorial service." Ezra's jaw tightened. That fast? They didn't even wait for the dust to settle. "There's more." Lila pointed to a series of dates. "Look at the pattern. Every time a SAR dog was retired after a handler's death or injury, Their chip was deactivated within 48 hours. Then they vanished from the system. Systematic, Ezra muttered. They had it down to a science. The morning wore on as they built their case. Ezra made calls to his old SAR contacts, his voice growing more animated with each supportive response. Lila organized medical records, creating a timeline that showed how Rusk's operation had exploited multiple service dogs. Around noon, Ezra's phone rang. His expression brightened as he answered. "Captain Martinez?" "Yes, sir. Thank you for calling back." Lila watched as Ezra's face shifted through various emotions while listening. Runa's ears perked up at the familiar name, and she moved closer to Ezra. "That would be incredible, sir," Ezra said finally. "Your statement could break this wide open." After hanging up, he turned to Lila with renewed energy. Captain Martinez was Silas's commanding officer. He suspected something was wrong with how the dogs were being handled after injuries and deaths, but couldn't prove it. He's willing to give us a formal statement about the pattern he observed. Lila felt hope surge through her. A commanding officer's testimony carries weight. That could help counter Rusk's influence with the county. "Martinez said something else," Ezra added, his voice softening. "He told me Runa and Silas had the highest success rate in the unit. They saved 28 lives together." The number hung in the air between them. Lila looked at Runa, seeing her in a new light. 28 lives. 28 families spared the pain of loss. And then she had been discarded, her noble service forgotten. "We won't let them bury this," Lila said firmly, reaching for Ezra's hand without thinking. He caught it, his warm grip steady and reassuring. Their eyes met, and for a moment the weight of their shared mission merged with something deeper, more personal. Ezra's thumb traced small circles on her palm, and Lila felt her breath catch. The moment was broken by urgent knocking. Lila's assistant burst in, waving a legal document. "They've moved up the hearing. County's giving you 48 hours to surrender Runa or prove fraud." Lila snatched the paper, reading quickly. "Rusk must have pulled strings. This is dated today, but it's signed by officials who are on vacation." "He's panicking," Ezra said, moving to read over her shoulder. His presence was solid and warm behind her. "He knows we're close to exposing him." They had 48 hours, 2 days to compile their evidence, present their case, and save not just Runa, but potentially dozens of other service dogs from Rusk's operation. "We need to work faster," Lila said, already turning back to her computer. "I'll start preparing the medical affidavits. Can you get Martinez's statement today?" "I'll drive to meet him myself if I have to," Ezra assured her. "And I'll call the other handlers. We'll get their statements notarized immediately." They worked through lunch, through the afternoon, through the early evening. The pile of evidence grew. Service records, medical documents, handler statements, photographic proof. Each piece strengthened their case, but also revealed the shocking scope of Rusk's operation. "Look at these numbers," Lila said, pointing to a spreadsheet she'd compiled. "Based on the breeding records we've found, he's made millions selling puppies with falsified SAR heritage. And every dollar built on exploited service dogs," Ezra added grimly. "Dogs like Runa, who gave everything to save lives, only to be treated like breeding machines." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the office, Lila felt fatigue settling into her bones, but determination burned brighter than exhaustion. She looked up to find Ezra watching her, his eyes soft with something more than just shared purpose. "We should take a break," he said gently. "Get some food, clear our heads." "There's no time," Lila protested, but her stomach betrayed her with a growl. Ezra smiled, the expression warming his tired face. 20 minutes. The diner across the street. We need fuel to keep fighting." At the diner, over coffee and sandwiches, their conversation shifted from strategy to personal hopes, from evidence to shared dreams. Ezra spoke about Silas, about growing up together, about the day he decided to follow his brother into emergency services. Lila shared stories about her early days as a vet, about the patients that changed her, about why she chose to practice in a small town. "I needed to believe in healing again," she admitted, picking at her French fries. "After everything, I had to find a place where I could make a difference." Ezra reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "You do make a difference. Look at what you've done for Runa. What you're doing now, standing up to Rusk, that takes real courage." "We're doing it together," Lila replied softly, turning her hand to intertwine their fingers. The connection felt natural, right? Like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. Back at the clinic, they worked late into the night, fueled by coffee and shared determination. Runa stayed close, moving between them, offering silent support. The 48-hour deadline loomed, but their case grew stronger with each passing hour. "I think we've got it," Ezra said finally, looking at the organized files before them. "The medical evidence, the handler statements, Martinez's testimony, the financial records showing the fraud. It's solid." Lila nodded, allowing herself to feel cautiously optimistic. "Now we just have to present it in a way that even Rusk's allies can't ignore." "We will," Ezra assured her, and his confidence steadied her. "Together." They shared a look that held more than determination, more than the satisfaction of building a strong case. In fighting for justice, in working to expose corruption, they had found something unexpected, a partnership that transcended their shared mission, a connection that promised more than just victory over Rusk. Runa, sensing the moment, pressed against their legs, binding them together. Her presence reminded them of why they started this fight, but their joined hands spoke of why they would see it through. Not just for justice, but for each other, for the chance to build something lasting from the ashes of corruption. The night stretched ahead, full of work still to be done, but they faced it together, their shared purpose now enriched by deeper feelings, their fight for justice strengthened by growing trust and affection. The morning dawned crisp and clear, a welcome change from the stormy weather that had marked the beginning of their journey. Lila stood outside the county courthouse, her hand resting on Kaya's head, drawing strength from the dog's steady presence. The German Shepherd sat perfectly still, alert but calm, as if she understood the gravity of what lay ahead. "Ready?" Ezra appeared beside them, looking sharp in a pressed shirt and tie, his usual rescue gear replaced by courtroom attire, but his eyes held the same unwavering support. "As will ever be," Lila answered, smoothing down her own professional attire. She'd chosen a simple navy suit, wanting to project competence rather than flash. "Kaya seems calm." "She knows what she's doing," Ezra said softly. "She's done this hundreds of times before." The courthouse steps were already crowded with spectators, word having spread about the unusual hearing. A local news crew had set up their equipment, and Lila spotted several familiar faces from the veterinary community. But what caught her attention was Wade Rusk, standing near the entrance with his lawyers, his confident smirk unchanged. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Judge Eleanor Martinez, known for her no-nonsense approach, had agreed to oversee the practical demonstration after reviewing their preliminary evidence. The stakes were enormous, not just for Kaya, but for all the other dogs in Rusk's operation. "All rise," the bailiff called, and Judge Martinez took her place at the bench. Her sharp eyes took in the scene. Lila and Ezra at the plaintiff's table, Kaya sitting perfectly at attention beside them, Rusk and his legal team looking polished and prepared. "This is an unusual proceeding," Judge Martinez began, her voice carrying clearly through the packed courtroom. But given the nature of the claims and the evidence presented, I've agreed to witness a practical demonstration of the dog's alleged search and rescue capabilities. We will proceed to the designated testing area. The entire assembly moved to the carefully prepared grounds behind the courthouse. 3 separate courses had been set up under the supervision of independent SAR experts. The first would test live scent tracking, the second cadaver detection, and the third complex search patterns. Skills that only a properly trained SAR dog would possess. Lila's heart pounded as she prepared Kaya for the first test. "Remember who you are," she whispered, touching her forehead to the dog's. Kaya's amber eyes met hers with absolute focus. The first challenge involved locating a volunteer hidden in a complex maze of shipping containers. As soon as the command was given, Kaya transformed. Gone was the gentle companion. In her place stood a working dog with generations of purpose bred into every muscle. She moved with precision, quarters close to the ground, nose working the air currents. The spectators fell silent, watching in awe as she navigated the course. Within minutes, she gave the alert bark that indicated a find, leading the observers straight to the hidden volunteer. "Perfect execution," one of the expert witnesses commented. "Classic SAR technique." The cadaver detection test followed. This time, training materials were hidden in various locations, some elevated, some buried. Again, Kaya performed flawlessly, demonstrating the specific alert pattern used by certified recovery dogs. "That's not something you can fake," Ezra whispered to Lila. "That's years of specialized training." With each successful find, the energy in the crowd shifted. Even Judge Martinez leaned forward, her expression intense as she watched Kaya work. Rusk's confident smile had begun to fade. The final test was the most challenging, a complex search pattern requiring the dog to ignore multiple distractions and focus only on the target scent. Kaya moved through the course like a machine, her concentration absolute. When she made the final find, perfectly indicating the location with the trained passive alert, a murmur of appreciation ran through the crowd. "She remembers," Ezra whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "She remembers everything." Lila felt tears threatening. This wasn't just a dog going through motions. This was an expert demonstrating years of specialized training. Every movement, every alert, every response proved beyond doubt that Kaya was indeed Runa, the highly trained SAR dog who had saved countless lives. Back in the courtroom, the expert witnesses provided their assessments. They spoke of the specific skills demonstrated, the impossible-to-fake responses, the level of training evident in every aspect of Kaya's performance. "Your Honor," Lila's lawyer addressed the court, "what we've witnessed today proves beyond any doubt that this dog is Runa, the search and rescue dog illegally sold into breeding. Her skills could only come from years of professional training, exactly matching the records we've presented of her service with the county SR unit." Judge Martinez nodded slowly, her gaze moving from Kaya to Rusk and back. "I've seen enough for today. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning for final arguments and my decision." As they left the courthouse, Lila felt hope surging through her chest. Kaya walked beside her, head high, tail gently wagging, the picture of a working dog who knew her worth. Ezra's hand found Lila's, squeezing gently. "She was magnificent," he said quietly. "She was herself," Lila replied, her voice catching. "For the first time since I found her, she was completely herself." The sun was setting as they drove back to the clinic, painting the sky in shades of hope. Kaya dozed in the back seat, exhausted but content. Watching her in the rearview mirror, Lila felt something shift inside her heart. The dog's transformation today hadn't just been about proving her identity. It had been about reclaiming it, about remembering who she was meant to be. "We're going to win," Ezra said confidently as they pulled into the clinic parking lot. "After today, how can we not?" Lila nodded, reaching back to stroke Kaya's fur. "Today wasn't just about winning the case," she said softly. "It was about redemption, for all of us." Inside the clinic, Kaya settled into her bed while Lila and Ezra reviewed the day's events. The dog's performance had exceeded even their highest hopes, demonstrating skills that could only come from years of professional training and dedicated service. "I kept thinking about Silas," Ezra admitted, his voice quiet in the gathering darkness. "Watching her work today, I could see why they were such a perfect team." Lila reached for his hand, understanding the complex emotions behind his words. She honored his memory today. She showed everyone exactly who she is, who she's always been. Tomorrow would bring the final battle, but tonight, watching Kaya sleep peacefully in her bed, Lila allowed herself to believe. To believe in justice, in redemption, in the power of remembering who you truly are. The dog had shown them all that some things can't be erased. Not dignity, not purpose, not the essence of who you were meant to be. The night wrapped Red Bluff in darkness, broken only by the soft glow from the clinic's security lights. Inside, Lila finished her evening rounds, checking on the recovering animals. Kaya padded quietly beside her, a constant shadow since their triumphant demonstration earlier that day. The lights flickered once, twice. Then everything went black. "That's not right," Lila muttered, reaching for her phone's flashlight. The backup generator should have kicked in automatically. She made her way to the utility room, heart pounding as she discovered the cables had been deliberately cut. A metallic scraping sound echoed from the back door. Kaya's ears pricked forward, a low growl rumbling in her throat. Lila's hand trembled as she dialed Ezra's number. "Something's wrong at the clinic," she whispered. "The power's out and—" The line went dead. Glass shattered in the kennel area. Kaya bolted toward the sound, with Lila close behind. In the beam of her flashlight, she caught glimpses of a dark figure moving between the cages. Wade Rusk stood there, wire cutters in one hand and a steel catch pole in the other. "You should have taken the deal," he said, his voice cold and controlled. "Now we do this the hard way." Kaya's growl deepened, but she held her ground, waiting for commands just as she'd been trained. Rusk swung the catch pole toward her. "Don't you dare touch her!" Lila lunged forward, knocking the pole aside. Rusk shoved her hard, sending her stumbling into the wall. Pain shot through her shoulder. "Last chance, Dr. Hargrove. Step aside." "Never." She positioned herself between Rusk and Kaya, even as fear clawed at her throat. The struggle that followed was brief, but violent. Rusk grabbed for Kaya. Lila intervened, and they all crashed through the back door into the narrow alley behind the clinic. Lila's phone skittered across the pavement, its light spinning crazily before going dark. Rusk caught Lila's arm, twisting it behind her back. She cried out in pain as he pushed her against the rough brick wall. "You've got spirit, Doc. I'll give you that. But this was never your fight to win." Kaya circled them, snarling, but without a clear shot at Rusk without risking Lila. "It became my fight," Lila gasped, "the moment you turned living beings into inventory." Distant sirens wailed. Rusk's grip tightened painfully. "Doesn't matter now. By morning, your reputation will be in shreds. Who trusts a vet who can't even keep her clinic secure? Who lets animals get attacked on her watch?" He shoved her harder against the wall, then released her suddenly. Lila slumped to the ground, watching helplessly as he reached for Kaya with the catch pole. Headlights suddenly flooded the alley. Ezra's truck screeched to a halt, and he leaped out, already running toward them. Rusk cursed, dropping the pole and disappearing into the shadows between buildings. "Lila!" Ezra knelt beside her, hands gentle as he helped her sit up. "Are you hurt?" She could only nod, shock and pain making speech impossible. Kaya pressed against her other side, whining softly. By morning, everything unraveled just as Rusk had promised. County officials arrived with emergency orders, citing critical safety violations and negligent supervision. They revoked her hold on Kaya and suspended her operating license pending investigation. "This is ridiculous," Ezra argued, as animal control prepared to take Kaya. "It's clearly sabotage." But the damage was done. Local news vans gathered outside, running stories about security breaches and endangered animals. Longtime clients called to cancel appointments. Everything Lila had built, everything she'd fought for, crumbled around her. Standing in her empty clinic, shoulder throbbing and spirit crushed, Lila faced the darkest moment of her life. She had lost Kaya, her reputation, and possibly her entire practice. The weight of defeat pressed down on her like a physical thing, threatening to break what little strength she had left. A year slipped by like water through cupped hands. Seasons changed outside Lila's clinic windows. Spring rains giving way to summer heat, autumn leaves scattering across the parking lot, winter frost etching delicate patterns on the glass. Through it all, she worked. Quietly. Steadily. Rebuilding what Rusk had tried to destroy. Her practice grew back slowly, like new grass after a fire. Word spread among the local farmers and ranchers. Dr. Hargrove was still there, still caring for their animals with gentle hands and unwavering focus. She kept Kaya hidden in her private office, away from prying eyes. The shepherd had grown strong and calm, her coat gleaming with health, her eyes bright with contentment. Ezra's visits became less frequent but never stopped. He'd bring coffee, sometimes dinner, and they'd sit in her office after hours, piecing together the puzzle of Rusk's operation. Bank records, training logs, whispered stories from former employees. Each piece was small, but together they were building something solid. "It's like building a case file," he'd say, spreading papers across her desk. One fact at a time. Lila noticed how he never mentioned his brother Silas anymore, without that edge of raw pain. The wound was healing, slowly, just like hers. She filed each new piece of evidence carefully away, knowing their time would come. Some nights, sitting with Kaya's head in her lap, she felt that quiet strength growing inside her. Not the desperate fury of before, but something cooler and more focused. Patient, like a river wearing away stone. "We'll be ready," she'd whisper to Kaya. "When the moment's right, we'll be ready." The February thaw came too fast, turning the mountain snow into rushing water that poured down Red Bluff's canyons. Dark clouds hung low as Lila finished her morning rounds, the radio crackling with emergency alerts about flooding. Then came the call that made her blood run cold. A school bus had skidded on the saturated Bridge Creek crossing. It now teetered on the edge, its back wheels spinning over empty air as the bridge crumbled beneath it. Through the clinic windows, she could see emergency lights flashing in the distance. She grabbed her coat and Kaya's lead, her heart pounding. "Come on, girl." They arrived to find Wade Rusk already there in his tactical gear, shouting orders from a safe distance while his security team milled around uselessly. The bus creaked ominously, its yellow side gleaming wet in the gray light. Small faces pressed against the windows, wide-eyed with terror. Ezra's rescue truck pulled up seconds later, spraying gravel. But they all knew the truth. The heavy rescue equipment was 30 minutes away. The bridge wouldn't hold that long. Lila looked at Kaya, saw the intensity in those amber eyes. Without hesitation, she unclipped the lid. "Find them," she whispered. Bring them home." Kaya moved like water, sure-footed across the treacherous ground. She reached the bus door and squeezed through the gap, disappearing inside where no adult could safely go. Inside the bus, Kaya's training took over. She guided the first trembling child to the door, where Ezra had secured a heavy-duty fire hose as a lifeline. The German Shepherd's body provided a steady brace as each small foot found purchase on the slick surface. "That's it, nice and slow," Ezra called out, his muscles straining as he anchored the line. One by one, the children inched their way to safety, Kaya never leaving their side. Lila moved forward to help a crying kindergartner when her boot slipped on the wet metal. Before she could fall, Kaya was there, pressing against her legs, holding her steady until she regained her balance. The bus gave an awful groan. Metal twisted and concrete crumbled. Just as the last child reached solid ground, the bridge collapsed. The yellow bus plunged into the churning water below with a thunderous crash. Local news cameras caught every moment, including Wade Rusk shoving past a small girl to leap clear of the falling debris. His face, twisted with fear and self-preservation, was broadcast live across 3 counties. But the real story was Kaya. She stood tall among the rescued children, her coat dripping but her eyes bright with purpose. Phones and cameras captured her gentle nuzzling of each child she'd saved, a far cry from the dangerous breeding stock Rusk had claimed her to be. The viral footage of the rescue sparked an immediate investigation. Local news stations played the video on repeat, Kaya's heroism contrasting sharply with Rusk's cowardice. Within days, whistleblowers came forward, exposing years of fraud and animal abuse. County records were subpoenaed, revealing the dark web of corruption surrounding Rusk's breeding operation. 3 weeks later, Rusk was led away in handcuffs, charged with multiple counts of fraud and animal cruelty. The judge officially returned Kaya to Lila's care, acknowledging her as the rightful handler. On a quiet Sunday morning, Lila and Ezra stood at Silas's memorial. The autumn air was crisp and clear. Lila's hands trembled slightly as she placed Silas's old service tag next to Kaya's new collar, a symbol of past and present united. The German Shepherd sat perfectly still, her amber eyes reflecting understanding beyond words. Ezra's warm hand closed over Lila's, steadying her. No words were needed. In that moment, their shared journey of grief had transformed into something beautiful, a love born from standing together for what was right. Kaya leaned against their legs, finally home where she belonged. The triumph wasn't marked by fanfare, but by the quiet certainty that truth and compassion had prevailed. Through Kaya, they had all found healing, their broken pieces coming together to form something stronger than before. Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.